TROM vs. Scientology series, examining the goals, problem, mass. Before I begin, I want to advise the viewer that the main purpose of this particular video is to educate those indoctrinated in Scientology technology about a fundamental difference between TROM and Scientology. If you're not a Scientologist and are just a beginner in studying TROM, realize this presentation is not essential to your learning at this time and can be safely skipped. In your study of TROM, going past the original manual and into the advanced lectures, you'll eventually come across this passage, which I will thoroughly explain in this presentation. The actual legs, the actual postulates of the true GPMs, aren't in the reactive bank. They're in the analytical mind. If you search in the bank, you'll do it all wrong. It's an analytical construct, so they're in the analytical mind. All that is in the bank is a mishmash of wrong opposers, the lies. The truth is in the analytical mind. So the mistake Ron made on the subject of goals was to look into a mass of lies in the bank for the truth. It's pretty heavy reading to say the least, but a vital topic to discuss if we're going to make a thorough comparison between TROM and Scientology. Let's start with the terminology. A postulate is a goal, desire, intention, or purpose. GPM stands for goals, problem, mass. If you look this up in the Dianetics and Scientology Technical Dictionary, you will find 5 definitions for this term that take up about half the page. It's a goal and the resistance to it, to identities in opposition, two forces in opposition, two postulates opposing each other, forming a mass in one's mind. That's how Hubbard defines it in Scientology. When Dennis refers to the legs of the GPM, he's talking about one of the 4 manifestations of a goal or postulate. Let's make an example with the most fundamental of postulates, to know or to be known, with their opposers of to not be known or to not know. These 4 manifestations of this postulate are said to be a goals package, and each of its manifestations is said to be a leg of that goal or postulate. Examples of postulates opposing each other would be you want to know someone and they hide from you. That would be to know in opposition to the to not be known postulate. Another would be the to be known postulate in opposition to the not know postulate. You want to get someone's attention or be known to them, and they ignore you or try and not know you. If you've studied Dianetics and Scientology, you'll already know about the analytical mind and the reactive mind. The analytical mind is the rational mind, and the reactive mind is the hidden, irrational mind. The analytical mind thinks in differences and similarities, and the reactive mind thinks in terms of identities. The reactive mind is also commonly referred to as the reactive bank or just the bank, and that's it as far as defining terms is concerned. Now, common to both subjects is the idea that if one has an intention and that intention meets opposition, a mass is formed in the mind. When I say mass, I'm not talking about a large quantity of things, like a mass of people or objects. I'm talking about substance on the physical plane and upset on the mental plane, which actually has a very tiny amount of substance to it in one's mind. Both Scientology processes and TROM exercises aim at dissolving these masses or upsets from one's mind so as to free up one's attention, reach higher states of awareness, and make one happier in general. I want to inject here that this whole business of goals packages, goals problem mass, and postulates in conflict are addressed in neither TROM nor Scientology right away, but in the upper levels of both. Any study of the mind or spirit, if it advances far enough, inevitably arrives at the subject of goals, purposes, intentions, and so on. If you've already watched the TROM 101 playlist on this channel, you'll know all about postulates in conflict and how they're resolved in TROM. If one has the postulate to know, he knows the opposition to that postulate is to not be known, and that postulate is made by the one opposing him. This is also true if he has the goal of to help, then his opposition is to not be helped. To eat is opposed to not be eaten, and so on and so forth. In TROM, only the postulates are used to stimulate one's mind to bring up past incidents to address in therapy. But that's not what's done in Scientology processing. The auditor, the Scientology practitioner, would ask his pre-clear, his subject, to name a goal. Let's take, for example, the goal to know is selected. The auditor would then ask who or what would oppose that goal, and the pre-clear would list identities that would oppose that goal. The problem is, postulates in conflict, opposing intentions, or opposing goals are analytical constructs. They're discovered through logical deduction, not by asking the pre-clear. The only way you're going to get positive results in therapy is if you examine the purpose to know in opposition to the purpose to not be known, not this purpose pitted against some person or thing. Just like in a previous video in this series, where the man answered his significant other this question with things like a teacher or a policeman or a stop sign, in Scientology processing, a pre-clear would also answer this question the same way, probably mentioning a list of similar people and things. And unless the postulate to not be known was on that list, the entire list would be wrong. This is what Dennis means by wrong opposes in the passage I quoted earlier. Now, why exactly is it that you can't answer this question with anything but the opposing postulate? Because cops and teachers are identities. They are not themselves purposes. And identities are found in the reactive mind where the lies are. I bring you back to what I said before. The analytical mind is the rational mind that thinks in differences and similarities, and the reactive mind, reactive bank or bank, thinks in identities. Oppose a purpose against an identity and you're going to run into big trouble in therapy. But as Dennis said in the lecture, The Unstacking Procedure, this is a mistake Hubbard was bound to make. He made this mistake because he failed to enter into the picture what are known as pan-determined postulates. Pan-determined postulates, simply put, is the idea that each postulate has a twin. When one wants to know someone or something with what is called a self-determined postulate, he is also postulating that person or thing to be known, that last being the pan-determined postulate. If he wants to be known, he is postulating that other person to know him. This works also with not know and not be known, where you want to ignore someone or you want to hide from another. In Scientology, Hubbard only thought as far as the to know and the to not know postulates. He never implemented their pan-determined twins of to be known and to not be known into his subject. He could not conceive of the to know postulate being complemented or completed by the to be known postulate, much less figure out the only opposition to the to know postulate is the to not be known postulate. How could he? He didn't even acknowledge the existence of that postulate, much less deduce that is the actual opposer of the to know postulate. It's a postulate that opposes another postulate, not a person, not an object, and not an event. Even if you think this over and can only come up with a person, object, or an event, still it's a postulate that's behind that person, object, or event. Let's take a look at that passage again. The actual legs, the actual postulates of the true GPMs aren't in the reactive bank. They're in the analytical mind. If you search in the bank, you will do it all wrong. It's an analytical construct, so they're in the analytical mind. All that's in the bank is a mishmash of wrong opposers, the lies. The truth is in the analytical mind. So the mistake Ron made on the subject of goals was to look into a mass of lies in the bank for the truth. Does the passage make more sense now? The goals problem mass is a result of opposing postulates in the analytical mind, not opposing identities in the reactive mind, and certainly not a postulate in conflict with an identity. Address the postulates in the analytical mind and you'll get results in therapy. If this is your first time watching on this channel and you find all this overwhelming, I do understand. It's a lot to soak in at once. I only brought up any of this because no comparison of TROM and Scientology would be complete without examining the subject of GPMs. You can still study and practice TROM without having to know anything about Ron's GPM technology. But if you want, you can study more of Hubbard's theory about goals problem mass in Scientology if you are just curious, and learn more about Dennis Stevens' take on it in his advanced lectures when you're ready for it. If you already know Scientology and are familiar with the goals problem mass, I invite you to take a look at Dennis's technology for handling postulates in conflict, and you'll discover the TROM technology for handling such is logical and safe, and how Hubbard's method has the danger of further validating the reactive mind. That's all for now, and thank you for your time. To continue learning more about the resolution of the mind, also known as TROM, take a moment to download the free ebook from this video's description. Don't forget to subscribe so as not to miss any further videos. This has been a presentation of DIY Salvation. Don't just use your mind, resolve it.